And so let's go to Allan Buckwell, representing the farmers. Allan, there has to be some serious leaning, meaningful movement, but it has to be possible for farmers to do it within the budget framework they have. So what's the solution?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not sure that I am speaking for farmers. I'm speaking for myself, and they can judge. Let's start from where Thierry and Tassos launched us, that European agriculture needs to engage in sustainable intensification. I'm fully signed up to that agenda, and to me, it's very simple as to what it means. It's an intensification of the knowledge applied to every hectare of management, of every hectare of European agricultural land, so that we maximize both the agricultural productivity of that land and the conservation and natural capital productivity of that land. We can do this, we must do this. The question is this policy reform taking us in that direction? And I'll offer you 4 reasons for hope that we are advancing towards this cause. The first reason is the very statement in the proposals that seem to be carrying through, subject to some important details, that 30% of Pillar 1 is to be devoted explicitly to greening. Now, 30% of Pillar 1 of the CAP is a lot of public money. It's 4 or 5 times the current annual spend on agri-environment. So if I was a red-hot environmentalist or a green-hot environmentalist, I would be thrilled by this, that here's a signal that we are going to massively expand public resources devoted by farmers to environmental land management. That ought to be good news. Secondly, the proposals allow some member states who want to go even further. That there are proposals in the flexibility of funds between Pillar 1 and Pillar 2. If you want to ship money into Pillar 2 and devote it to environment, go ahead, do it. It's there. Also, the scope in the proposals for those who think that the protection of the rural environment means putting more of our resources to those systems of farming which tend to be in the marginal areas, in what we erroneously and stupidly continue to call less favoured or subject to natural constraints, instead of describing them in a positive way, that these are the areas that can and do deliver environmental outcomes, carbon storage, water protection and so on, and biodiversity. If member states want, through the way they define their regions and they allocate the funds to those regions, through the way they use the top-ups for areas with natural constraints, they could divert significant more resources to farming in those areas which deliver those environmental benefits. And fourthly, the proposals, and this is supported by the European Council in the MFF, want all European policies to be seen to be devoting 20% to assisting protecting Europe against climate change. And I congratulate one of the amendments in the Parliament that says that we should insist that all member states spend 25% of their the Pillar 2 resources on agri-environment climate measures. Now that's an amendment. It's not yet been adopted. So in those signals, this policy could, depending on how it's implemented, even now make a significant stride in the direction of both assisting farmers and giving us better environmental land protection in Europe's rural areas. However, I would suggest that there are also 4 reverses or retreats out there which look rather worrying and dangerous. First of all, that we seem in this reform to be reversing the strategy of the last 10 or 15 years that Michael Hamill quite rightly said. We've spent, and Tassos explained how the development of the CAP over the last couple of decades has steadily but systematically recognised the environmental market failures and said the policy's got to move in that direction. And there used to be an ambition to gradually shift resources from Pillar 1 to Pillar 2. That was seen as the way of doing this. That process has come to a halt. If anything, it's reversing. Added to that, twice running now in the discussions in the financial perspectives, the heads of government have reversed that strategy by cutting Pillar 2 more than Pillar 1. And that was evident in the decisions of a couple of weeks ago. So that's a setback to that long-run strategy, which in a sense the hope is that the greening of Pillar 1 is sufficient to offset that. So therefore, attention focuses on the greening of Pillar 1. Is that going to take us in the direction of better environmental land management? Well, I'm afraid there are some doubts. The second reversal in this policy is that the definitions of agricultural activity and active farmer seem to be deliberately and expressly running away from the concept that farmers are multifunctional landscape managers, because we're dropping references to keeping land in good agricultural and environmental condition, and we're only focusing agricultural activity on the traditional activities of raising crops and animals. That seems to be a reversal. And the obsession in active farmer debate that organisations who may well have objectives outside agriculture and yet are appropriately managing large tracts of agricultural land, why should they be excluded from this policy? It's wrong in concept, and that's the second reversal. The third reversal is the political watering down of greening, of the Pillar 1 greening. If we're going to green the CAP by greening Pillar 1, then the measures ought to have some noticeable impact. What the Parliament and the Council, I'm not levelling blame at one or other, it's both, the discussions seem to be going in a direction of widening the exemptions, reducing the extent to which these greening requirements interfere with farming. Well, of course they've got to interfere with farming. If we weren't going to make any difference to farming, then farmers would carry on doing what they're already doing, and we're saying what they're already doing is not doing enough for the environment. Those changes that seem to be out there will mostly work in the direction of producing a smaller environmental difference to the greening actions. And as Michael Hamill has just said, that this applies to cross-compliance too. The other worrying feature in the greening proposals is the widening of the green by definition. Now, in a way, DG Agri created this problem. They opened the door by exempting organic farming, and it was predictable and predicted that, of course, the argument would be that farmers in the agri-environment schemes should be treated no differently. The outcome of this is that the proportion of European agriculture which actually implements the greening actions, if these proposals go through, particularly the widening of green by definition, will be rather low. So the total number of hectares on which there's a different level of management than is currently the case will be pretty small if these actions go through. Having said all that, we haven't made the decisions yet. We're still in the debate. There is still time to rescue this if the political decision makers want. Will the Commission stand up to the Council and the Parliament if they're both asking for watering down the greening requirements? To be honest, I doubt it. But who knows, they may surprise us. And the fourth retreat is double funding. It makes no sense at all to allow public money in two funds, the Direct Payments Fund and in the Rural Development Funds, to be paid for identical action. Now again, this battle is not lost. Everything depends on the details of what is the baseline from which agri-environment measures take place. And if they genuinely are over and above the baseline, and if that baseline is raised, then perhaps there can be some real delivery. So, Chairman, to finish, 2 points. A CAP whose principal claim for legitimising itself is through greening, a CAP which then makes no noticeable difference to biodiversity, to soil, water and climate protection by 2020, if we can't see a noticeable difference when we're devoting 30% of Pillar 1 of CAP to greening, if that is not detectable, then that's a policy that is, you have to ask the question, does it deserve to survive? And my final point, in a sense, marries up with what Michael Hamill said. If it turns out that DG Agri, the Agriculture Council and ComAgri and farming organisations, if the outcome from their debates is a CAP which in practice does not embrace this agenda, then you have to ask the question, is this the correct institutional framework for getting correct environmental management of Europe's agricultural land? And you have to say that there's some doubts about that. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alan. I think you're going to get some questions on that.